So before we get started with this practice, I do want to say a few things just about you and your practice, and for not just for today, but for your practice here on out. And that is that I want you to treat yourself with a bit of compassion and grace. And I know that you come with a lot of expectations, and you have some goals and objectives that you're looking to obtain from this practice itself. But I want you to know that you can start off exactly as you are and just trust the process, that you will get better, that you will progress, and you will improve or find some type of improvement. And with that, when we are practicing, that it's important that we recognize that there's a difference between pain and discomfort. And if we are experiencing pain, which might feel like something that's sharp or shooting or causes us to kind of wince or even hold our breath, it's something that would be not sustainable for a long period of time, or even just a brief period of time either. If you feel pain, I want you to back off of it. Okay, so either don't do the pose altogether, just kind of omit the pose and do something else, maybe child's pose, the resting position, maybe you're just sitting there, whatever the case is. Just opt out of that position or back off of the intensity. So perhaps going a little too deep in the pose might be causing you that pain. So maybe you can lessen or regress the posture itself so that you're not experiencing pain because you're going too far with your limitations. But also know that, that this practice is going to offer a bit of discomfort. Okay, so some of the stuff that you experience for your pre-test, the thighs burning in your wall sit test, the hamstrings feeling like they're being stretched out in any of those hamstring, like the sit and reach test. That sensation most likely is just discomfort. Okay, that is stretch, that is building strength, that is you growing basically and getting out of your comfort zone. And that's what we're trying to look for in this practice, is we're going to look for discomfort. And I know that probably sounds really almost backwards, that we're going to our yoga practice to find discomfort when we really just want to break free from all of our stress. But this is a healthy kind of exploration of our stress, and we always have the option of backing off of it if it becomes too much. And that's where we start to play with our edges and our full capacity of what we're capable of doing. So please do promise, and I'm going to have you guys actually pinky swear with me. So put up your pinkies. And promise to me that you're going to take care of yourself throughout this practice, and that you're not going to push yourself so hard that you feel pain, and that you're going to recognize those sensations as either something that is good feedback, that is just discomfort, that's something that you're working on improving yourself in terms of flexibility, your balance, your strength, etc. Or you might be feeling pain and recognizing the difference between those two. So hook it. Thank you. Yeah, just take care of you, because I'm not going to be able to take care of each and every one of you throughout this practice. I wish I could be there in your homes and helping you, or even on campus and seeing your bodies doing this movement to give you that immediate feedback. So you're going to have to be a little bit more resourceful with yourself, as well as making sure that you speak up if you do have any questions, and then just posting those on the chat or unmuting yourself. All right. So with that being said, I want you to start off on your back. So come all the way onto your back. So coming onto your back, sorry, I was just reading something from the chat. All the way onto your back, you have a couple options to work with here. So we can work with our full corpse pose, where the legs are going to be extended out in front of us. Your feet are going to be a little bit wider than your hips, and you're just going to relax the legs all the way down. Now, if you're feeling like your back is tensing up or kind of seizing, your low back is kind of like fighting you, you have another option of bending your knees and placing your feet on the floor. When you do this, you can adjust the pelvis in a way where it feels like there's a little less tension in that low back. I like to have my feet wide as the mat and the knees collapse into each other so that you really don't have to have as much effort just even keeping your knees upright. Okay, so letting the knees collapse in, and you just give yourself that opportunity to feel as little effort as possible. But if you're able to, I recommend coming into corpse pose. Full corpse, the knees bent is half corpse. And in this position, you're going to let your feet just open up like pages of a book falling open. I want you to position your pelvis so that it feels like not only the front of the pelvis, but also the back of the pelvis is flatter. And with this, walk your shoulders underneath you. So the shoulder blades slide under and lie flat across the ground so that the collarbones can spread wide across the chest. Bring your arms down by your sides and leave a little bit of space between your body and your arms. So they're kind of like in a downward V shape. Bring the palms to face up with the fingertips curling naturally towards the palm. And then lift your head up an inch or so, and then place it back down on the ground so that your nose points straight up towards the sky and your chin is not digging into your chest or reaching overhead. And you can close your eyes here. And for some of you may want to bring a towel across your eyes, but if you'd like to use the camera to look at what is happening, you can keep it off and just relatively close by. Good. And so where you are, I want you to take a full breath in through your nose, just filling up the lungs. And then open up your mouth and let out a sigh. Take another full breath in. Open up your mouth and let out an audible sigh. Good. One more just like that. Filling up with breath, open up the mouth and exhale, release with a sigh. Now closing the mouth, keeping some space between top and bottom teeth. Just continue to breathe in and out through the nose and relax fully into the ground. And sometimes this takes a little bit of practice to remind ourselves to relax or relearn how to relax. Some of us have unlearned some things, like how to relax and release and let go. But remembering that we can trust and find ease in resting ourselves on the ground, allowing the earth, the ground, to support us fully. And that we can fully relax our control, our expectations, our responsibilities and obligations that we carry around with us on a regular basis. We can put down the many hats that we wear. We no longer are son or daughter, brother, sister, husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, student, employee, etc., friend. We can just be exactly where we are, breathing. And that's the only thing that we need to do right now. Take a few more of these moments just to settle in. And from here, just lightly place our hands on the soft part of our belly, right on our abdomen. And this is going to be below the diaphragm, but we're actually using the diaphragm to help us breathe into this first part of our 3-part breath. And so I want you to think of when you breathe in, we're going to be filling up our belly like we would fill up a balloon or inflate a balloon. So take a full breath in through your nose. Push the breath all the way down to the base of your belly and feel it expand. As you exhale out through your nose, just relax and then feel the breath ease out of the body. Take another breath in. Feel the belly expand. And it's not just lifting up towards the sky, but also expanding through the side waist and even feeling your low back moving. It would be almost like you're expanding and pushing out against your belt. Then as you exhale, you just release the breath fully from the body and you just return to that place that we began. A few more deep breaths like that, breathing in through the nose, expanding the belly, exhaling out, and feeling it release and deflate. And our hands on the belly serve as a marker to help us with guiding the breath into those places. Good, last full breath here. Deep breath out. And keeping your right hand on your belly, you're going to slide your left hand up to the rib cage. It can be just below the nipple line or even across the heart, whatever feels where it feels most restful. And this is going to serve as that second part of our 3-part breath. So first we'll breathe into that first part, into the belly. And then let the breath expand and roll up to the rib cage, the chest. Exhale, release out the chest and just reverse the order. So you're going to feel the chest release and then the belly releases last. Inhale, fill up the belly. Roll it up into the chest. Feel the ribs opening up, creating space. And then exhale out the chest and then the belly. Breathe in, the belly, side waist, low back. And breathe all the way up into the rib cage, feeling the side ribs and even the middle back, upper back opening up. Exhaling out, releasing the chest and the belly last. Good. For the sake of this practice, unfortunately, we do not have a third hand, but if we did, we would place it along the collarbones, okay, or the low throat area. So just imagine that you do have that space there or a marker there. I want you to breathe into your belly, filling up into that right hand, finding the expansion here. Let the breath roll up into the rib cage and chest area, and then lightly roll the breath up to the low throat. Right up to the low throat and the collarbones, feeling it catch softly here. Exhale all the way out the throat, the chest, the belly. Inhale to belly, chest, throat. Exhale, throat, chest, belly. Go through a few more rounds on your own and just feel how this breath moves throughout the body. You might be feeling that the fullness of the breath is actually going to take part in that first part. And we find that 75% of our capacity for breathing comes from just moving this diaphragm. So when we breathe into our belly, that's a good 3/4 of our full capacity. And once we find that fullness of the belly, we find a little bit more into the rib cage and the chest. And we feel just a little bit more, just filling up the very last bit into that low throat. And then we ease everything fully out to make space for the next round of breath. You may notice that you might be a shallow breather and that you only breathe into the upper portion of your torso. And so this breathing technique would be really good for you to kind of encourage more of that diaphragmatic breath, finding a fuller and deeper breath, and something that is a little bit slower and more mindful. And I want you to go through at least 2 more rounds of breathing without your hands on your body. So place them along the sides of you and see if you can breathe without the markers there. But if you find that it's still a little too tricky, feel free to just bring those hands back up onto the belly and to the chest to help you guide the breath into those places. So this is our 3-part breath, Dirga Pranayama. And I find it to be one of the more cleansing types of breath that we can do to help center ourselves and bring our mind into the space where we need to be right here. Good. And with your next in-breath, I want you to stretch the hands straight up towards the ceiling. Then reach the arms all the way overhead as you lengthen out through the fingers and toes in opposite directions. Reach, 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 and then see if you can do so with your head and your tail. So these are also limbs that we will focus on throughout the practice. We literally have 6 limbs to play with. So big stretch, and then exhale. Carry the knees into the chest. You can do this one by one. And with those knees bent into your chest, you can either grab to the back of the thighs or to the front of the shins. Try to keep your ankles side by side and not crossing so that we maintain this more in our neutral rotation of the pelvis. Now, some of you may feel like this is just enough of a stretch and you're like, I just want to stay here forever. Some of us may want to feel a little bit of a massage and just start to rock side to side. And as you're rocking side to side, knowing that you'll feel a little bit more of the massage in your low back and in your mid back if your knees are tucked in. And if your knees are a little bit further out, that you're going to feel this in the top of the gluteal. Okay, so the very top of the pelvis just underneath. So it's not necessarily the back, but just along the cleavage of your bottom. Good. And I want you to pause here. If you're rocking side to side, gently place your feet on the floor with your knees bent into half corpse. And we're going to move our feet into a hips distance apart. So bring your toes and your heels to touch. And we're going to find a nifty way of moving into a hips distance apart. So keep your big toes touching. I want you to separate your heels. Okay, so now your feet look a little bit more like an arrowhead. And then you're going to pivot from your heels, move the toes to be forward. So now that your feet are parallel, like you're standing on railroad tracks. Okay. So with our feet, now our feet are about hip distance apart. They actually line up with our sit bones a little bit better here. We're going to go through this exercise that I like to call pelvic floor clock. Okay, so if we imagine our pelvis like the face of a clock, 12 o'clock would be towards our navel, towards our head, towards the back of our mat, or the front of our mat, whichever direction you're in. And then 6 o'clock would be towards our feet, towards our knees, or towards the other side of the mat. Okay, so if we were to move our pelvis into different positions, 12 o'clock would mean that we're moving our pubic bone towards our head or towards our navel. Okay, so when we do this, I want you to see if you can feel like your abdomen is squeezing in and down to scoop that pubic bone up and towards your face. Your low back is going to implant on the floor, going to press into the floor. And you're going to feel this a little bit shorter distance through the front of the body. So now your pubic bone is closer to the front of your ribs. Okay, this is a 12 o'clock tilt here, or posterior tilt of your pelvis, for my kinesiology majors. And then going into a 6 o'clock tilt in the opposite direction, you're going to feel your tail get heavy. Your low back will most likely arch up, maybe off of the ground, so you can actually take your hands under there. You're going to feel that there's more space through the front of your abdomen. This is an anterior tilt, or 6 o'clock tilt, as I like to call it. Exhale to 12 o'clock tilt. You're going to feel your low back press into the ground. See if you can do this without using your feet and just using just your abdomen. And then inhale to a 6 o'clock. Tail gets heavy, low back will arch. Exhale, scooping the tail, 12. Inhale to 6 o'clock. Exhale to 12 o'clock. Inhale to 6. Exhale, 12. Inhale, 6. Exhale, 12. Inhale, 6. So now that we just got our little John Travolta Grease Lightning pelvis movement out of the way, we should feel a little bit more of a response into that low back. Maybe there was a little bit of a stretch that was happening. Maybe the rest of your spine feels a bit more fluid. Okay, so continuing on with the face of the clock, if we imagine that 12 o'clock is by our head and our face, then 3 o'clock would be our left hip and 9 o'clock would be your right hip. Now we're going to go side to side between 3 and 9 o'clock. And I like to think of this almost like a ship or a boat. If one side dips down into the water, the other side rises up, and then vice versa. So it just kind of rocks side to side. Now, as we're doing this motion side to side, I want you to limit how much movement you're feeling between your knees. Okay, so the knees are not going to be rocking side to side to get this movement. Okay, they're not going to be swaying. I want you to keep your knees as still as you can, and then dip down through your left hip. The right hip will lift up. Dip down through your right hip to 9 o'clock, left hip will lift. And then again, left hip dips down, right hip reaches up. And then dipping down through your right hip, left hip lifts up. Good, switch sides one more time. Dip down through your left, lift the right. Exhale, right side goes down and left side lifts up. Good. Finding your way back to neutral pelvis and noticing that our hips do have that type of mobility, that they can kind of dip and swirl and tuck and untuck in different positions. And this is going to play a part, an important part later on when we flip up onto our hands and knees and we're balancing. We don't always have that feedback of the ground, but we'll be able to still feel how our pelvis can maneuver and eventually position it into a neutral pelvis. All right, so let's go back around and we're going to actually go through some circles with the pelvis. We're going to go clockwise, starting off with a 12 o'clock tilt. So exhale, move your pubic bone towards your head and face. Good. Then dip your left hip down for 3 o'clock. The right hip stays up. Dip down through your tail into 6 o'clock. Low back will arch. And then rounding over to 9 o'clock where your right hip gets heavy. And then all the way back around to 12, to 3, 6, and 9. 12 to 3, and 6 to 9. Back to 12 o'clock. Good. One more time on your own, just circling all the way around and just feeling like you're going all the way around that pelvic rim. Good. Once you hit 12 o'clock, go in the opposite direction, going towards your right hip, tail, left hip down, and then into 12 o'clock. And then a few more times all the way around, going counterclockwise. Good. And I feel like I need to be singing. If I could turn back the hands of time. Don't worry, I'm not going to sing because I know I'm being recorded right now. Good. And one last circle. And coming back to 12 o'clock, return back to a neutral position. So now the front of your pelvis and the back of your pelvis should feel like they're rather flat, like a plateau. Okay, so now we're going to incorporate that 12 and 6 o'clock tilt into the movement of this next pose, which we're going to do a moving bridge. So with bridge pose, we're actually going to be lifting our hips up off the ground. If you have any type of neck injury, you may want to limit how high your hips do go up. Okay. We've got our feet about hip distance apart, our hands down by our sides. You're going to root down into your feet as you exhale to 12 o'clock. Press the feet down into the floor even more, and now lift, rolling the hips, the low back, and the mid back up away from the floor. So you should feel like all of your backside is lifting up until you get to the shoulders and the upper arms. Press down through those shoulders, inhale, and then exhale, roll the spine back down, just cascading in the opposite direction of how you came up. Really focusing on getting that low back to touch down, and then inhale to a 6 o'clock tilt of the pelvis. Exhale to a 12 o'clock tilt. Keep that 12 o'clock tilt. Lift up from your pubic mound, lifting all the way up. Inhale at the top, and then exhale, roll the spine all the way down. Inhale, tail gets heavy. Exhale, scooping up and rolling the spine up into your bridge. Inhaling here, and then exhaling, rolling the spine all the way back down. Inhale to 6, and we'll do one more. Exhale, 12 o'clock tilt. Press down to the feet. Roll the hips up. Inhale at the top, and then exhale, rolling the spine all the way back down. Inhale to 6 o'clock tilt, and then come back to a neutral pelvis. All right. So now we're going to bring our knees into our chest. Good. Scooping those knees in. And I want you to bring your arms out wide into a T shape. In this T shape, I want the palms to be facing up. This kind of promotes a little bit more of that opening through the collarbones, so they spread out wider. If you were to have your hands pointed facing down in that internal rotation, you kind of close off into the chest area. We actually want to open up and feel a little bit more stretching through the pecs. All right, keeping your knees tucked in, you're going to rotate the hips over to the right. So you're bringing your knees to the right side of the room, and try to keep your left shoulder anchored down. Carefully look over your left shoulder for this reclined twist pose. So this is one variation of our reclined twist. In future practices, we might do this with a leg extended out. We might do this with both legs extended out. And just know that as we do this particular posture, we're not necessarily looking to get our knees all the way down, but to feel the release of our spine. And when we think of the spine releasing, then eventually the knees will follow along. Okay, but do make sure that your feet are relaxed on the mat. They're not just floating up in the air and you're having to suspend them. Good. Breathing into your left lung. And then inhale, lift both knees up together through center, and then exhale the knees over to the other side. Going into that reclined twist on this side. Looking out over your right fingertips. For those of you who might have some scoliosis of your spine, that twisting and bending in different directions, you may notice that with these twists that one side is going to feel much more natural and easy than the other, and that the other side is going to feel more limiting and challenging and possibly even harder to breathe in. And just do the best that you can to maybe feel the balance between the two sides, but if it's a structural thing, it's going to be very difficult to feel even. And that's not necessarily what we're looking for. We're just looking for some balance. Good. Then inhale, lift the knees back up through center, going all the way back in. Keep your right knee tucked in towards your body. We're going to extend the left leg forward. As you reach through your left leg, press the left heel straight out and away and feel the toes point straight up towards the ceiling. Make sure that the toes aren't rolling out to the side, but you feel that your inner left thigh pushes down, rolls down, enough so that you could balance a little egg on that second toe. Okay? With your right knee tucked in towards your chest, if you feel like that thigh bone is kind of bumping up against your hip, you might want to move the knee a little bit wider, like it's going towards your outer right shoulder. Okay. This posture is known as wind releasing pose. Okay, and it gets its name because of this movement of squeezing the leg in and massaging the colon. This side is the ascending colon. And as it massages the colon, it helps to push through any gas or wind or any other waste. And eventually we release wind or pass gas and basically fart. So just be thankful that we are not in a class full of other people who are farting. Good. Take another full breath in here. Belly pushes up against the thigh. Exhale, left knee curls in to meet the right. Inhale, right leg extends out in front of you. So we're just switching sides. So now the left thigh is squeezing in and we're massaging along the descending colon. Reach through right heel, firming the right hamstring or the back of the thigh into the floor. You feel that you're opening up into that hip flexor. Good. And again, if you need to, moving that left knee towards the outer left shoulder, a little bit more depth. Good. And again, breathing into your full belly. And all the way out. Last full breath here. Good. And then very slowly take your right knee in to meet the left. So both legs are tucked in. Now, depending on the orientation of your room or the space where your mat is being placed, if you have more room on one side compared to the other, you'll probably want to roll into that direction so you do have some space to get up. But we're going to be coming up to a seated position with as little effort as possible, and there's actually a particular way of doing so. So if you'd like to, you can turn and look and see and just watch me as I go through this lifting out of this corpse pose or reclined position. So I'm going to roll over onto one side. I'm going to roll over not only my hips, but also my shoulders and my gaze. You can be on your arm, whether your head is resting on it or your arm is out to the side like I have. And your top hand, okay, if you're on your right side, your left hand. If you're on your left side, your right hand. Your top hand is going to come to the floor in front of your chest, okay? I want my head to be the very last thing to come up. And so I'm going to extend my top leg forward. I'm going to push into my hand and slowly ease my way up to a comfortable seat. Okay, so feel free to do so on your own. Let the momentum of your top leg extending kind of guide you up. And as you're pushing your hands into the floor, then you're slowly leading the rest of the chest. And this is actually a pretty good idea for coming out of our bed in the morning. So I don't know about you, but my body doesn't really like to be slingshot across the room or whiplash coming out of my bed. And this feels like a more natural progression of waking up if I were to roll over to one side and kind of gracefully transition into waking up for the day. So hopefully it'll be something that you can adopt throughout your regular practice. All right. Any questions before we move along? We covered some corpse pose. We did some wind releasing, reclined twist, some moving bridge, and then 3-part breath. Okay, we're going to continue on then. Okay, so the next position is a seated position, and this is called easy sitting position. Now, the term, I think that the name for this is actually, there's a bit of a mistranslation, and that it's not always easy for us to be seated in this particular shape. But what it really means is to be easeful in your posture. Okay, so try to have as much ease in the pose as you can and make whatever adjustments are necessary for you. So for this position, this is a little bit different from a cross-legged position. Cross-legged, you would actually have your feet directly underneath your knees like so. But this one is going to have one ankle in front of the other with the knees spread apart. And this provides a little bit wider base of support for you, for your pelvis. And it also allows your knees to drop down and away from your body. What we're looking for is less of this, where our knees are up into our armpits, okay, which might be for some of us the case, and more so with the knees dropping down. So we have a little bit more opening and space here. If you are one of those people that have a difficult time with getting your knees down, you can use a block and place it directly underneath your pelvis, like so, kind of like a booster. I'm actually sitting right on top of that block. A pillow or something really thick and firm would suffice as well. But this would give you the opportunity, and you can see now that my knees dropped lower than my hips. And when that happens, then we allow for a little bit more circulation through our legs so your feet don't go numb or get that tingly sensation, okay, in the feet, the pins and needles. And you'd be possibly able to sustain a meditation for a longer period of time without your body just, responding and saying, get out of this pose, okay? So easy sitting position, and we're gonna find a neutral position with our pelvis. So we're not rocking to the front of the pelvis into that 6 o'clock tilt. I'll show you from the side what that looks like. Without the block. Okay, 6 o'clock tilt might look like this, okay, kind of arching forward. And then if we're in a 12 o'clock tilt, this is like, I'm just bored or tired and I'm just giving up on life. Okay, so that's that 12 o'clock dumping into the low back. Everything feels short and compressed compared to this arching. I want you to find more of that neutral position of the pelvis so that you're neither forward on the sit bones nor back. You feel like you're resting your spine on a tall oak tree. Okay, so with that shape, you're going to sit up nice and tall. Rest the hands either on top of your knees or to the floor beside you. You're going to inhale and circle the arms all the way up. Reaching up to the fingertips. Exhale, bring your hands together at your heart. Good. This is called Anjali Mudra. Inhale, reach the arms up. Don't worry, you don't have to spell it out or anything. Exhale, circle the arms, widen around. Good. Inhale and bring the arms up. Exhale, draw the hands down. We're going to do a little bit of a wrist stretch. So I want you to bring your elbows towards the floor in that shape. Good. And now see if you can bring your wrists lower than your elbows. Good. Just a little bit more of a stretch in that wrist area. Inhale, steeple the arm back up toward the sky. And then exhale, circle the arms wide and down. Good. Inhale, bring the arms up. Exhale, the hands into that prayer shape, Anjali Mudra. Okay, and this time I'm going to mirror you for this. I want you to use your right fingertips. You're going to push into your left fingertips. You're going to stretch out that wrist on that left side. Good. So you're just using the fingers to push into it. Yeah. We're not using those hands in either direction. Good. And then point the fingertips up and then switch sides. So now your left fingertips are going to win that little tug of war there. It's not really tugging, but more pushing. Push of war. Good. And point the fingertips up. Inhale, reach the arms up towards the sky. Exhale, circle the arms wide and down. We'll do one more wrist stretch. Inhale, bring the arms up. Exhale, hands together at your heart in Anjali Mudra. Interlace your fingers. You're going to flex the palms forward and stretch the hands all the way out in front of you. Squeeze your elbows straight. Now, trying to keep your ribs, the front of your ribs, down, you're going to bring your arms up by your ears. Good. Oh, yeah. That does something to your head and neck, right? So you might probably want to jut your head forward to probably get into that. See if you can keep your head still stacked above your shoulders, finding that neutral pelvis. Good. Reaching up through the heels of the hands, to the spine, to the shoulders. Woo. Exhale and release the arms all the way out and down. Okay, we're going to transition onto our hands and knees now. So you can either roll over your ankles or swing the legs off to one side. Rolling over your ankles looks a little bit like that. And then swinging the legs off to one side, just kind of swinging them off. Okay? So on your hands and knees, I want you to bring your fingertips so they're spread out wide, okay? You're going to grip down into the ground through all 10 of your fingerprints. Okay, so feel like you're less of sinking into the body and you're pushing the floor away from you. You can see that you're actively working your body away from the ground and using your forearm strength so that you don't have to feel like your wrists are weak, okay? With your knees directly underneath your body, tops of feet are going to be on the ground, and I want your toes to point straight back behind you. So take a peek between your legs and make sure that your feet disappear behind your knees. Then you're going to bring your head back up so it's in line with your tail, okay? Feel how your belly muscles are lifting away from the ground and they're just kind of holding you in like a corset. Good. This is our tabletop position, right? And from here, we're going to move into some cat and cow stretches. So we'll start off with our cow. I want you to flip your tail into a 6 o'clock tilt. Okay, so you're reaching your pubic bone between your legs. You're finding that anterior tilt of the spine. Your belly dips down. Your back is going to arch. Now feel your shoulder blades squeeze together. Shine your heart forward. Lift your head up towards the sky. This is called cow. Exhale, scoop your tail under, 12 o'clock tilt. Push down into the ground with your hands and lift up from your abdomen. You're going to tuck your chin in and look at your belly button. So this is called cat. Inhale, flip your tail up into your 6 o'clock tilt again. Anterior tilt of the pelvis, the heart shines forward, moving your head and tail up. Yes, I was just mooing. Okay, exhale, round the spine into your cat and find that low back opening up. Inhale, finding your way into your cow pose and just noticing how utterly divine that feels. Another dumb pun. Exhale, round the spine into your cat, pull the navel in, squeezing up from the abdomen. Good, inhale, back into your cow. And just asking yourself, how many times are you going to be milking these dumb cow puns? Good. Exhale, round the spine into your cat stretch. Pull the navel up and in. Squeeze from the abdomen. Inhale and open up back into your tabletop. All right. So your wrists probably need a little bit of a rest right now. I want you to bring your knees together, your big toes touch. We're going to go into the next pose, which has 3 different variations. This one's called child's pose. Okay. So I want you to bring those big toes touching, knees together. Sit back on top of your heels. Okay, with your hips all the way back on top of your heels. See if you can stretch your belly on top of your thighs and bring your forehead down to the mat. Your arms are going to circle around and you're going to reach your fingertips in the opposite direction from where they were. So they're going in the direction of your toes. Let your shoulders slide down towards the floor and find a moment to rest here. For some of us, we feel this as a nice stretch in our low back. We might start to feel that there's a little bit of that space. Our shoulder blades slide away. They feel like they're releasing. For others, it may feel like our face is being smashed into the ground, okay? And it doesn't feel very restful. In fact, you just feel like you're just face planting, okay? So if your bottom is riding high, okay? If your bottom is like here, and you're kind of like in this position here, another alternative or variation for this pose is extended child's pose. So the hands would be forward, about shoulders distance apart. I want everybody just to try these variations, okay, just to see if that works for you. The hands are going to be as wide as the mat. You're going to use your hands to push your hips back. Good. And then you are going to allow your head to either come down to the mat or just hang towards the mat. Okay, so that might feel like a little bit nicer option, especially if you felt like your hips were really high and that your face was getting smashed into the ground. Okay, so this is the second variation. This is traditional child's pose. This is extended child's pose. The next variation, you're going to come up onto your hands and knees. You're going to keep your big toes touching and then separate your knees. So now your legs are in a V position, at least the lower portion of your legs are in a V position. And you're going to sit your hips back on top of your heels. Now there should be space between your thighs for your belly to rest down. You can also have your arms in that extended child's pose shape. I just call this extended child's pose with wide knees. And it's self-explanatory, yeah? If you know what child's pose is. Good, so you want those hips to be down on top of your heels and feeling like your hips are lengthening back. Now, compared to child's pose, for some of us, child's pose really gives us a nice stretch in the low back. I find that this posture gives me a nice length in the spine, all throughout the spine. So it just depends on which suits you. Feel free to move into any other variation if that was, if that felt better in your body today. And as we're going through these practices throughout the rest of the semester, I want you to know that this posture, maybe I will guide you through coming into child's pose to rest, but there are times where you may need to personally just take a break, okay? So that's when you would be adopting child's pose and just coming out of the pose, taking a moment in your child's pose and just breathing, resting there, okay? And then returning back to the practice when you feel ready to, okay? So again, that's just that pinky swear of you honoring yourself and your body. All right, let's go ahead and climb up onto hands and knees again. We doing okay? Thumbs up? All right, cool. Okay, so it's gonna get a little bit harder. With this next posture, it's known as balancing tabletop or bird dog, okay? Do the best that you can. Again, if you need to take a child's pose instead, you can do that, okay? But I don't want you to experience any pain, just sensation or discomfort, okay? For this next posture, we're gonna break it up into a few different parts. So you're still coming into your tabletop pose with the hands directly underneath your shoulders, fingertips are spread out. We're gonna do this one together, okay? I want you to extend your right leg straight back behind you. As you're extending out through your right leg, I don't want the foot to come higher than your hip. Okay, so if we're coming higher than the hips, we'll have a tendency to dump into that low back. Try to shoot the legs straight out from the hips, pull the belly button in, and then balance out the hips so that you're neither 3 or 9 o'clock dipping down, okay, that your pelvis is more neutral. Keep gripping through your fingertips and then lengthen out through your crown, the head, and your tail in opposite directions too. We're not just bumping the head, we're sinking down here, okay? The head is part of the posture too. Exhale, lower your right knee down underneath your body, and then inhale, extend your left leg straight back behind you. Good. As you reach through your left heel, the toes point straight down, your inner left thigh spirals towards the ceiling. Good. Try to find a long neck here and reach your tail back. Good. Abdullah, lift up from your low belly. Yeah. You feel how that's different? Good. So everybody's Abdullah. Pull up from your low belly. Feel that. Yes. Good. Same thing, Lisbeth. Lift your head up a little bit higher, Lisbeth. There we go. Nice. And then lower your left knee down. All right. So now we're going to work into just the arms for this next portion of it. Keep pressing through your fingertips, especially if you're feeling like your wrists are feeling a little bit tight right now or stiff. Keep pressing through your fingertips and engage through your forearms. Reach out through your right arm. Right thumb spins up and your palm is facing the left side. The arm is going to be in line with your head. So this is important that your head is not lifting too high up nor sinking down. You want that head to be in line with the horizon. Good. Keep your core strong and solid, pulling up from your navel. Another full breath here. Good. Michaela, draw your head down a little bit lower so your gaze is down at the floor and your arm comes up in line with your ear. Good. Exhale, release your right hand down and then send your left arm up. Good. So now with your left arm up, you're going to spin the thumb up towards the sky. The palm is facing towards the right. Good. Your head is in line with that spine. Taking another few deep breaths here. And releasing left hand down. Good. Feel free to take a child's pose. I'm having a little bit of internet connection issue. Take a moment in your child's pose, resting here. All right, my internet is just being stupid. Okay, let's go ahead and climb up onto our hands and knees then. Coming back into your tabletop. Now we're going to incorporate both the arms and the legs in our balancing tabletop pose. So with that, I want you to extend your right leg straight back behind you. Extend your left arm out in front and try to keep everything so that it's horizontal. Okay, you're pressing into your right fingertips. Pull up from the navel. Good. Full breath in and out through your nose. Good. And then exhale. Release your left knee or your right knee and left hand down to the ground. Good. Let's go ahead and switch sides. All right. Left leg, right arm, reaching long throughout the entire body. Pull the navel up and in. Good. Keep working through it. And slowly release. Go ahead and take another child's pose. Woo, good job, guys. In your child's pose, if your wrists are feeling a little bit tender, feel free to make little soft fists and then circles through those wrists. So that should feel a little bit nicer on the wrist. You can also open and close, open and close, open and close. All right. Let's go ahead and rise up. And before we come up to standing, does anybody have any questions at all? Are we feeling like we're doing pretty well? Thumbs up, we're doing okay? All right, cool. If you do have any questions as we're coming up to standing, feel free to unmute yourself or post something in the chat real quick, and I'll try to get to it. Okay, so we're gonna make our way up to standing, and we're gonna finish off this practice with our last pose, which is known as mountain pose. And this is arguably one of the most important postures that we will be practicing, probably with the exception of corpse pose, which I find is just probably the favorite pose for everybody. With mountain pose, the reason that it is one of the most significant or important postures is that mountain pose is considered the template of all postures. Okay, I'm going to say that again because it's really important. Mountain pose is the template of all postures. And this is in terms of the alignment and the energy that we're going to be using throughout the posture itself. Okay, so we're going to find our mountain pose, and we're going to find this in a hip distance apart. Now, when we're standing, it's a little bit more challenging because we don't have that fancy foot trick that we did in our bridge. So what we do have are the ASIS points, so the anterior superior iliac spine for my kinesiology majors. You're going to point your fingertips down from that frontal hip bone point, okay? And you're just going to have your feet so they fall directly underneath that area. So you kind of look down, you make sure that your feet are directly underneath. If I were to go to my outer hip distance apart, I've got my childbearing hips, I would be too wide here, okay? So I want the feet to be directly underneath the body as if they're directly underneath our sit bones, okay? Now, in that hip distance apart, we're going to find the four corners of our feet. Okay, so to do that, it helps to lift up on all of the toes of your foot. Okay, so lift the toes up while still pushing down and burying the balls of your feet, the knuckles of your pinky toes, the inner and outer heels into the ground. As you do that, we're actually lifting up on 3 different arches of each foot. Okay, so we have the arch that runs from the ball of the foot to the heel of the inner heel. Okay, that's that arch that we typically find, the medial arch. And then we also find the lateral arch, which is from the knuckle of the pinky toe all the way to the outer heel. Okay, so a little less known one. And then we also have the arch running across the body, okay, that goes from the ball of the foot to the pinky toe knuckle. So that goes across all of the metatarsals, okay, all the way across there, okay? So as we're finding that type of arch across all of those different corners of the feet, I want you to keep the arches lifting up, okay? So as we're lifting up through the arches, pressing into those 4 corners, see if you can keep those arches lifting and slowly release the toes down from the pinky toe to the 4th toe, to the 3rd toe, to the 2nd toe, and then to the big toe, okay? It's a little tricky, and we're going to keep practicing on that, but it's important that we keep our arches lifting up in our postures, because when we fall down through our arches, we feel less responsive in our poses, and we're going to actually have less balance, okay? So when we feel the arches lifting up, we actually feel a lot more engagement. We can feel alert and responsive to any cases where we might be falling over, or aid us in our movement to be more graceful, okay, and not so heavy-footed. All right, so with our feet in those arches lifting position and all 4 corners of the feet touching down, I want you to find those inner ankles and your calves, and imagine that they're like elevator doors opening up, Okay, so you're going to start to separate. You're going to feel more pressure into the outsides of the feet. Okay, and I want you to also bury that weight into the balls of the feet. Okay, so you're feeling that those calves separating and moving apart like two magnets opposing each other. Okay, and you're going to feel how that's going to put a little extra pressure in the outsides of the feet. Now squeeze at the same time your inner thighs together. So with those inner thighs squeezing, calves are forming apart. You feel the elevator doors open and close. You're going to feel how this kind of starts to tone your buttocks. Okay, so you're going to feel that toning of the buttocks, inner thighs squeeze, calves form apart, pressing down through all four corners of the feet. So now there's a lot of energy that should be kind of working through those legs to keep them in this standing position. Make sure that in the standing position that your knees are not locked, okay, and pressing back behind you. I want you to feel like there's maybe, if you do have that tendency to lock through those knees, that you have a little 2% bend in the knees, like your hamstrings are pressing forward, okay? We're still squeezing internally, okay, through the inner thighs. We're pressing those calves apart, but we're also starting to feel that front and back engagement through the front of the thighs and the back of the legs, okay? With this is just the legs, and it's a lot of work, okay? But we're going to also start to feel how the rest of the body is going to respond to this building sensation, okay? Now, if you have that tendency towards a 6 o'clock tilt, okay, kind of that gymnast just finished her routine, okay, in that position, if you have that position, you're going to feel that your belly is going to hang out in front of you a little bit more. You're going to feel a little bit more pressure in the upper back and neck area. The head's going to jut forward to compensate for that. So we want to make sure that we're in a neutral position. And I like to remind people to feel like you're Michael Jacksoning your pelvis up into an upright position. So it looks a little bit like this. Okay, we all know who Michael Jackson is, right? Or was. Okay, Michael Jackson. Okay, not as thrilling as you may have expected it to be. Feeling your pelvis in that position, uprighting it fully, still keeping the engagement with the legs. Okay, now you're going to feel how you're going to have a little bit more engagement through your lower abdomen. Now, if you're in the opposite spectrum, if you have that tendency towards that 12 o'clock tilt, what I call that scared dog with the tail between its legs, or pooping dog, okay? If you're in that type of position for your body, I want you to grab onto the outsides of your ribs and then pull yourself up. So you're creating space into that lower abdomen, okay, and especially into the low back. So you're lifting up on the rib cage and pulling yourself up from there, okay? I don't have a fancy name for that. It's just lifting up your rib cage. All right, let's go ahead and stack above that. Now we've got our collarbones that I want you to have where they feel like they're stacking, okay, and stretching across the chest. So the collarbones spread wide. The arms are going to come down by your sides with the palms facing forward and the fingertips lengthening towards the ground. So you're going to feel the shoulder blades drop down too. All right, lastly, our head. Bring your chin so it's parallel to the ground and bring your upper palate back so that your ears stack above your shoulders. Okay, so this is where we find that structural alignment in our standing position. We want to carry that over throughout many of our other postures. So we don't feel like we're kind of lifting up into different areas or kind of feeling lopsided or compensating in ways that we can become stronger or more flexible. Okay, so this is our mountain pose. I want you to find a few of your deepest breaths here. So we're going to take a full breath in and just imagine the breath is washing up the front of the body, kind of like a geyser, rising up from the ground. You're going to feel how that energy works its way up. And then as you exhale, feeling this rinsing of energy pouring down the back of the body, kind of like a waterfall. Now just keep your arms down here. I'm just giving you for the visual. I want you to inhale. The arm, your body is going to feel the breath wash up the front, and then exhale, feeling it rinse down your backside. Good. Inhale, feeling that lift. And exhale, feeling that rooting and grounding through your feet. Good. Once more, inhale. Feel those four corners plug in to help lift you up. And as you exhale, feeling rooted as the fingertips travel down the shoulder blades, the tail, the heel. Good. Last breath. And exhale. Good. And find yourself at ease. So you start to notice that there's a difference between just standing, how we normally stand. Maybe one hip is to one side. Okay, maybe we kind of like dip through one shoulder. Maybe our hands come into different positions. We shift around quite a bit. Our mountain pose is actively working and engaged to keep us in that structural alignment. Okay, but there's still a lot of fluidity that is happening. There's an exchange of the breath that still continues to keep us so that we're not fully rigid, that we're not going to just knock over, but we remain reactive and responsive to whatever demands are being placed upon us. All right, so let's go ahead and take a seat. And if we have any questions, now would be the time. No? All right, good. Okay, so just a little review. We covered corpse pose where we're on our back. We did some wind releasing pose and reclined twist. We learned easy sitting position, so the position that we're currently in, as well as tabletop, cat and cow poses, child's pose, and balancing tabletop. And then we also learned mountain pose, and that mountain pose is the template of all postures in terms of the alignment and energy output. So with this in mind, this is going to be kind of building upon future practices. So next week when we do this, we're going to be repeating some of these poses and then adding a few more elements to it. But there's always going to be the same foundation of principles that we're going to be learning. And how we're always going to end our class is going to be using this word that is namaste. And you probably have heard this word being thrown around different places, but I find that it's important to know what it actually means. And the way that namaste is defined is breaking it down into namas, which means to bow, and te, which means to you. And so beyond the literal translation of bowing to you and the kind of type of prostration or a physical movement, there's more symbolism behind that, and that we recognize that there is this divine spark of light in each of us, and that we are respecting and honoring and acknowledging that light in each of us. So to close off our practice, we will bring our hands into Anjali Mudra, that prayer position that we learned earlier. And I will say namaste, and you will repeat it back and we'll bow. So I bow to the divine light within you. Namaste. All right, thank you guys so much. I'm going to stop the recording.